Hello, yes, I am here to talk about the UK Post Office and something called the Horizon Scandal, which has been known as the largest miscarriage of justice in British legal history, and it is about software testing. First of all, a little bit about me. I'm Kevin Harris, hello. I've been in testing for about 25 years, worked in multiple companies, multiple industries, from startups to multinationals. I've worked in communications, banking, big data, defense, travel, so lots of different things. At the moment, I am QA manager at a company called SixWorks, who are a startup working in defense, which means I cannot tell you anything about what I do. Okay, I'll just say that this is Postman Pat. He's as you can tell, a children's TV character in the UK. He has gone pretty much multinational. But he's a postman. He delivers the post. And we have a question. It is rhetorical, you do not have to answer. What would your company do if one of your customers found a bug in your system? We're software testers, this happens to all of us. But there's two possible answers. Number one, you apologize to the customer, you say sorry, and you try and fix that bug as quickly as you can. Or do you turn to that customer, blame them, take their money, and try to send them to jail? I am going to say this is all true. Everything I'm about to tell you is all true. Most of us here, hopefully all of us here, would have gone for A. British Post Office went for B. The customer rang up, said there was a problem with their system. They blamed the customer for the problem with the system. Sacked them, took their money, sent them to jail. But they didn't do it once. They did it more than 900 times. And yes, we are talking about a buggy computer system. That is what we are talking about here. It's called Horizon. It was put into the post offices in about 1999. It's still in the post offices now. It was a huge project. It did not have a good history before it went live. It had cost a lot of money, and it hadn't actually worked for what it was meant to do. They'd repurposed it for the post office, and it replaced all of the manual things that went on within the post office. I'm going to tell you about what a sub-postmaster is. So in the UK, we have post offices. They are high street shops where you go in, you buy stamps, you get your pension, you get forms for your driving license, all that kind of thing. In smaller towns and villages, we will have post offices that are part of another establishment, like a shop or a cafe or something else, because the village can't support a full-on post office. And they get people called sub-postmasters or sub-postmistresses to run those. So they are contracted to the post office to run these small branches. If you've ever seen Postman Pat, Mrs. Goggins here, she is the sub-postmistress of the village where Postman Pat delivers the letters. The problem is, when it went in, lots of these SPMs, I'm going to call them that because it's quicker, complained that there were bugs in the system. Many of them complained there were bugs in the system. But it was literally a black box. They got delivered this black box. They could not tell what was going on, so they couldn't prove it was a problem with the Horizon system, but they just had to keep ringing up. It's important that we talk about people who are affected. This story is all about the people who are affected. And we don't often think of our customers in this way. So I'm going to tell you about the people who are affected by this. So this is Lee. He had the Horizon system put in. He noticed there were problems. It kept telling him at the end of the day that he owed more money than he actually did. He knew it was wrong. In the end, he got up to £25,000, so quite a lot of money. It was showing as missing from his accounts. So he did what you would do. He rang the post office helpline and said there was a problem. He didn't do it once, though. He had to call it 91 times. 91 times he called the helpline, telling them there was a problem wrong with the system. So what do we think the post office did with a customer who's ringing up, telling them there's a problem with the system. They sacked him, and they took him to court. They charged him with theft and false accounting. He was ordered to pay the £25,000. Just to remind you, he did not owe £25,000. He owed nothing. This was bugs on the computer system. You think that's bad? He was ordered to pay court costs of £320,000. So all he's done is use a system that doesn't work properly. He has lost his job. He owes £345,000, and he is now made bankrupt, of course. And he has a criminal record, which means he finds it very hard to find another job again. This is not a unique story. We know, I think we all know, there is no such thing as a bug-free system. And I was trying to think, what would I have done in this kind of situation if I'd been working on that system? And then I realized, actually, I had worked on a similar system. In 2006, I worked for a company called Specsavers. They are the largest opticians in the UK. And we had a couple of thousand stores, high street, and we replaced the high street in-store system. So actually pretty similar to what Horizon was doing. For the 3 or 4 years I worked on that, we raised 10,000 bugs during the development process. And that, for that time, was not that unusual. Finding that many bugs on the system during the development phase, not unusual. When we went live, there were still 1,000 bugs live when we went live. But there were differences. We told the shop, and we only went live to one shop. We did not go live to the entire suite of branches that we had, which is what Horizon did. Horizon went live to all the branches, and they told them it was bug-free and robust. We know that is not going to have happened. And it was proved that it wasn't going to happen. This is Mark. He was a sub-postmaster. He was also a computer science graduate. So what he did was he wrote a little program. And he ran it alongside Horizon because he could see there was discrepancies in his accounts as well. So he found a bug on the system. So basically, if you sold a book of stamps during the day for like £10, everything went through okay, the customer paid the £10, everything was fine. But at the end of the day, Horizon showed 2 books of stamps had been sold. So one real book and one not real book, shall we say. And that meant that as far as Horizon was concerned, Mark owed an extra £10. So £10 paid, £10 that didn't exist hadn't been paid. So his system was showing this discrepancy. So he did all the right things. He rang up the helpline and he told them about the bug. Post office told them to contact Fujitsu. Fujitsu could recreate the bug, and they said they would fix it, and it would take 3 to 6 months. I'm guessing they had 3 monthly deployments at that point. And he said, okay, you're going to tell the other sub-postmasters? And they said, no, we're not going to do that. Nobody else has had any issues with the system, so we don't need to tell anybody else. So here's a question for you. How honest are you with your customers? Post Office and Fujitsu, not so honest. Every time somebody rang the helpline, and hundreds of people rang the helpline, they told them they were the only people who had any issues with the system. This is the days before social media, so there was no Facebook or Twitter or anything else, or Snapchat. So there was no way of knowing if any other people had issues. So they just kept lying to the people ringing in and saying there was a problem with the system. So in general, what the Post Office did was they blamed the sub-postmasters and sub-postmistresses every single time they rang in any kind of discrepancy on the system. They said it was their fault, and it was not a fault of the Horizon system. So I was talking about prosecutions and taking people to court. I love a good graph. This is a graph showing the number of prosecutions before Horizon went in. And you can see in the early 90s, there were a couple of years there was no prosecutions at all. Nobody found guilty of doing anything with this inside the post office. No theft, no fraud, no false accounting. Horizon got put in 1999. And these are the real figures. We went from naught for a couple of years in the early 90s up to almost 80 a year. And this kind of astounds me, because I love data, and I love what it shows us. And I can't believe that an organization this big did not notice this huge increase. And nobody stood there and said, what is going on here? What is the problem? The culture within these two organizations, Post Office themselves and Fujitsu, who built it, seems to have been poor, let's say. I think a lot of people were afraid of their jobs if they spoke out. And they got into this culture of really going after the people who had discrepancies on their system. So what did they do? Between 1999, when Horizon went in, and 2014, more than 900 sub-postmasters were prosecuted, taken to court, given a criminal record. They were either fined, sacked, or went to prison. Some of them were fined, sacked, and went to prison. And I will just reiterate, this is because of a buggy computer system. None of these 900 people had done anything wrong. More than 200 of these people went to prison. Went to prison because they had used a buggy computer system. That's not everybody. More than 2,000 other sub-postmasters and sub-postmistresses paid those discrepancies out of their own money. They remortgaged their house, they borrowed money from friends, just to keep these figures so they didn't have to get prosecuted, basically. But 2,000 other people. And just to let you know, at the moment, there's about 7,000 or 8,000 sub-postmasters and sub-postmistresses in the UK. So we're looking at 3,000 to 4,000 people out of 8,000 who were prosecuted or had to use their own money to pay for basically a buggy computer system. We talked about the people. Here's some more people. This is Noel. He'd worked for the post office for 42 years. On his 60th birthday, he was in jail because he had used a buggy computer system. This is Seema. She was pregnant when she was sent to jail. Local press called her the pregnant thief. She was accused of stealing money out of pensioners' hands. Her husband was attacked in the street. They lied to their son about where she was. They said she was visiting family when actually she was pregnant and in jail. This is Rabina. She lost her shop, her home, her job. When she was jailed, she was put on suicide watch. The thing to try and think about here is how you would feel in this situation. You have done nothing wrong. You have done your job well. You have tried to do everything you possibly can to run a shop, your own business. But still, you are prosecuted. You are given a criminal record. You are sent to jail for something you know you have not done. And this is not unique. A lot of people are talking about the depression side of what went on here. And just to say again, this is a buggy computer system. This is Julian. He did a plea deal that meant he didn't go to jail. He had to clean graves, 300 hours of cleaning graves. They had to sell lots of their possessions. His wife sold all their jewelry. But they had to try and make up this £39,000 that he did not owe. And he died with a criminal record, 2017. We talked about Mark earlier, who'd found this bug in the system and had reported it. What do you think happened to Mark? He wasn't jailed, he was sacked. Why was he sacked? Because his system showed us a shortfall of £13,000. The same year he reported the bug, the post office sacked him for exactly the reason that he'd reported the bug in the first place. Why he's carrying a dog, that's his support dog. He doesn't go anywhere without it now. He's suffered from depression ever since, and this is 20 years ago, and he's still suffering from depression now. Really sad stories when you actually go into these. So just to give you a bit more of a timeline, and why I'm talking about it now. So 1999 is when the system went in. 1999 is when they first started prosecuting people because of the data from the system. It took to 2009 before Computer Weekly ran its first article. They had been contacted in 2003 by this guy called Alan Bates, who was trying to spread the word about this system, but it was 2009 before they had enough details and data to actually run their first article. Prosecutions ended in 2014. 2017, there was a court case against the post office, led by Alan Bates and 555 other sub-postmasters. That court case took more than 2 years. So it was 2019, 20 years after this system had gone in, before the post office actually admitted there was something wrong with it and apologized. 20 years of prosecuting people and saying this was a robust system that had no bugs before they finally admitted there was something wrong with it. Public inquiry started in 2021. It is still ongoing today. If you look at the BBC News website in the United Kingdom, this is still the fourth most trending story in the UK today. 2 weeks ago today is when those convictions were finally dismissed. So that's 25 years of people having a criminal record, and it's taken 25 years for those criminal records to be struck off. And they've actually gone back to 1994. There's a slight upturn. They think there's another system that got put in the same time that also had problems. So yes, more than 900 convictions have now been finally squashed after 25 years, which is why this is still relevant talk now, because this was 10 days ago. 10 days ago this happened. And I still can't believe that I'm actually saying this. These are facts. This is what happened. 900 people, criminal records for a dodgy computer system. So what are the takeaways? Because there should be takeaways from this story. This shouldn't just be an interesting, horrific story. First thing is about your relationship with the customers. Obviously, the relationship that Fujitsu and the post office had with their customers was non-existent. The customers were looked down upon as just, people that they weren't open with, they didn't trust, and in fact, they actually blamed them. They wouldn't actually take their word for it. So you must have a good relationship with your customers. I was talking about Specsavers earlier, and that system going into that shop and having 1,000 bugs. Before it went in, I went and stayed in that shop and worked in that shop for 2 days before it went in to try and get a feeling of the shop, to work out how they use the system, how they would use the system. I found some requirements that we missed, but we built up a relationship with that store before we went live. So we knew that we would get feedback both ways. Fujitsu post office here didn't do that, did not seem to care. Obviously, listening to your customers. If they're raising issues with your system, it's because there's an issue with the system. It is not an issue with the customer. Even if it's something that does work and they haven't got it right, then that's a problem with your system and the way it's communicated or documented or what kind of help stuff you've got in there. So always listen to your customers, and we've talked about that in other talks. I would never believe, before I listened to this story, what a bug in a computer system could mean to people. You think that if your customers find a bug in the system, they're just going to raise it, move on, and that's it. I would never believe that people would have gone to jail because of a buggy computer system, would have lost their homes, their jobs. Relationships broke down over this. 25 years of depression, guilt, because there was a few bugs in a computer system that people would not admit to. I would never considered that would be an outcome for having a bug on the system. Nobody looked at the data. Data is so important. Real-world data should be the ones driving our decisions, not best guesses, not estimates. It should be the real data behind the scenes. And that should be at all levels, not just looking at the velocity of a team or the number of bugs you put through, but actually, as we saw, something as straightforward as seeing behind the scenes what the prosecutions was doing should have been telling them something and nobody was looking at it. Last 2 points are the ethical points. We all work for companies. What do you think your company would do to protect its reputation? Because this is what Fujitsu did wrong here. They cared more about their reputation than they did about their end customers, their users, and the knock-on effects. It was all about reputation. So what would your customer do, your company do in that situation? And finally, what would you do if you worked for Fujitsu or the post office in that situation? Would you have kept working for them? Would you have stood up and said, this isn't right? Would you have been a whistleblower? There are very few whistleblowers who have actually come forward on this case, even though it's 25 years ago. And I know when I worked on the Specsavers account, I was leading a team of 10 testers, and there were dozens more developers, program managers, everything attached to it. So there must have been dozens, if not hundreds of people on this system, and nobody stood up. Nobody came forward. And very few people have to this day. So what would you do in that situation? Would you keep working there? Would you stand up? Would you resign? I think people were very scared about their jobs. I think the reputation of the company was that if you'd actually stood up and said something, then you would not have a job the next day. But could you have done that? Could you have worked there still in that kind of company? It's a question for all of us to go away and think about. What's more important, our ethics or the paycheck? Because you can always get another paycheck, but you can't get more ethics. And that is it. If you want more information about this subject, there's a lot of information up there. I talked about Computer Weekly, doing the first article in 2009. There are now over 500 articles just on this issue in Computer Weekly. As I said, the BBC News site has excellent coverage. The inquiry is ongoing at the moment. They have daily updates on what's happening in the inquiry. So if you do want more information, that's another good place to go. If you like a bit of drama, there's a TV program called Mr. Bates versus the Post Office. It's made by a British TV company called ITV. It's 4-parter. And it is, again, all about how it affected the customers. It's well worth watching. If you like drama, or if you're interested in what happened in this case and the testing side of it, or the people side of it, it is definitely well worth a watch. And that's it. Does anybody... Oh. Ali. Thank you. And we have questions already.
Yes, we have some.
Hi, thank you so much. It's very impactful. Maybe it's too early in the process to ask about that, but was there any accountability from the post office or Fujitsu? Because we often talk that, developers are not responsible for the bugs. We should not blame the developers. Was there any resolution here, how that was approached?
It is still ongoing at the moment. So the post office have admitted liability. Fujitsu have also said they will pay towards the recompense of the people who are affected. I don't think they've started doing that yet. The post office have started offering amounts of money to the people who were prosecuted. Very few of them have accepted the amount so far. So that's an ongoing process. So it's early days, but definitely nobody has been legally made accountable. There are questions at the moment about whether people were committing perjury, going to court saying this was a robust system when they knew it wasn't, so lying to a court. So that is an option going forwards. But we are still, after 25 years, too early in the process to be able to answer that question. One of the other things is Fujitsu have now removed themselves from taking part in any further UK governmental contracts. They were a very large player. They have now removed themselves from that process.
Yeah, hi, thank you. That was awful. Yeah, not the talk, but what happened. I don't understand how
No.
Like, is there any root cause analysis on what the issue was? Is it due to the British Post Office as kind of like a very long history, the establishment, the organizational structure? Is there any analysis going on why, how? The mind boggles, really.
It does. Thank you for the question. Yes, I could have given this talk in about 8 different ways. One of them I could have talked about was actually the British judicial system and how the Post Office take part in that. So actually what happened is the Post Office got to run their own criminal cases. This wasn't a central court they had to go through. They had their own version of the court. So basically they were prosecuting, judging, and also making any decisions on whether people could appeal. So people had their appeals turned down, basically, by the Post Office. So that's only one of the issues behind it, is actually this. There's a huge issue with actual that side of it as well. But the inquiry is trying to get, as I said, the inquiry's been going on for 3 years now, and they still haven't got to the end. Yeah. It's still ongoing. It is a mess. I do not understand how anybody could have got into this situation. But I think the culture in the 2 companies is probably the biggest factor for this. Fujitsu trying to protect its reputation, and the Post Office, honestly, just being stupid.
Any other questions?
Thank you for the talk. Good presentation, sad story about whistleblowing. I myself kind of like was a whistleblower inside the team, like nowhere near situation that you described. Yeah. Was not a pleasant experience, but I was lucky, like for career it was still good. And also, you know, there's the situation with Boeing, and like some people got killed or decided to end their life. And as far as I know, with this also, like some people decided to take their life. In your opinion, what could make whistleblowing easier and life of whistleblowers easier?
I think it's the protection side, really. I don't think people, especially early on in this process, felt they would be protected at all. I think people felt that not only would they lose their jobs, but they'd lose their reputation, and possibly, because of the cover-ups going on, then possibly they would have been prosecuted themselves. So I think protection for whistleblowers, I think it's a lot better now than it was 20 years ago. But every company should have their own internal process. There should be no blame, no repercussions. You should be able to talk about anything internally. As long, of course, as it's not malicious, but you should be able to talk about these things internally, and if you need to talk about it externally, then you need to be protected. So better protection, but a better company ethos on the necessity for having it internally as well. I don't think either of these companies had that at that point. I hope they do by now. Thank you, though. Second row.
Thanks for the talk. Have the details of the bug been made public yet, or is it still part of the ongoing process? Like, was it a Jira ticket accepted without being tested in the middle, or did any of that information get out?
So the public inquiry has been public, so everything that goes on in the public inquiry is now a matter of public record. And that's included a lot of the documentation, a lot of the emails that went backwards and forwards between Fujitsu and the Post Office and internally within the Post Office. That is now a matter of public record. There is data missing. I don't think there's ever been any kind of bug list from Fujitsu from the period that it went in. So I think some of it is there. Everything that's available is now on public record. There are gaps in the information.
Hi, thank you. Thank you for your presentation. On your personal opinion, or maybe you know that from the records, why do you think that they haven't fixed it silently? Because I took that away from your presentation, that somebody found out and they showed them, hey, here it is, and it would have been no silently fixing it and, well, maybe not go on for so many years. That's incomprehensible for me. Yeah. Why do you think just stupidity or?
Yeah, no, it's a good question, and the answer is they were trying to do it silently in the background. If you watch the TV program, there's one scene where it's in Fujitsu, and they have a load of engineers who go in overnight and try to fix the data on the post office branches. They then tell the post office that it is impossible to touch the data on the post office branches. So the post office do not know that it's possible to do that, but Fujitsu are behind the scenes every night manually trying to fix data, and they did that for a considerable amount of time. So they did try and do it, but it was such a buggy system that it took them, well, I don't know whether it's bug-free now, but it took them 14 years before they stopped actually prosecuting people. So 14 years worth of not keeping up with the bugs that were on the system, yeah. But they were trying to do it silently, which was, I think, not the best thing for them to do. I think you should always be open with your customers. If there's bugs on the system, you let them know. You let them know you're trying to fix it, and you keep them informed. I think a customer who's informed will appreciate it more than a customer who is lied to and has the truth hidden from them. But thank you for your question.
Thank you. And thank you, Kevin. I'm not attacking. Actually, I really like your story because this is from one side, really sad story, and from another angle, really educative story, and actually tells us that why we should actually care about end users. So thank you once again, and here is also for you a small present from us.
Thanks very much.